I'm Mike Bridger. I've got to introduce myself. I never quite know what to say. I've been in practice for about 35 years. I'm still practicing, waiting for the main performance. But I've worked in different places. In medical centres, I've been involved in research at Exeter University into homeopathy. I've worked in all sorts of places. I've worked in different countries. But I can just say to you what a privilege it is to be learning this subject. It's just phenomenal. I'm very tubercular. You won't quite know what that means, but I get bored easily. In fact, I think I might go now. Joking, I'm panicking. Katrina went pale in the back there. But actually, homeopathy is such a fascinating subject. And it's brilliant. You're part-time psychotherapist. You're dealing with things that people tell you they've never told anybody else before. You're part-time priest, in a sense, because some people, it's like a confessional. You're part-time detective, because you've got to assess whether what people's telling you is true. Does this make sense? They say very often, and this is going to come a bit into this, how do you know whether they're getting better, the law of cure? A lot of people will come in and say, you'll say, how are you? And they go, exactly the same, Mr. Bridger. You say, but before, when you came in, you had a white stick and a dog. You were blind. You go, oh, that's better. That's much better. Thank you very much for that. But the problem is now, our television only can see in colour, but I can only see black and white. And I'm actually quoting a case, I promise you. And she said, and I still can't peel the potatoes properly. And I thought, this is brilliant, I've got her eyesight back. But no, the main thing was peeling potatoes. So you will never be able to get arrogant or ahead of yourself in homeopathy. You'll always be brought down by the patients. But it's lovely work. The detective work is phenomenal. People tend to, if somebody says to you, oh, I'm not a jealous person, because you do understand we look at the person, the mental state, and all that. They say it once, that's fair enough, isn't it? But supposing they keep saying, you say, what do you like to eat? And they say, well, I'm not a jealous person. What might you think? I'm not jealous. Oh no, why did you say? I didn't say that, I said cheese. It's that, playing with that, what people like, because treating animals and children is really easy because they don't lie. They are what they are. Human beings are something else. We all do it, and you'll never forget you're just the same as your patient. I've had a patient who said, do you get angry? He said, no. No, why? I said, well, no, just ask. He said, no. I said, why do you ask me this, that? Why do you ask me if I'm angry or not? The guy's furious, but he doesn't know it. So all the time you're doing this work to see and to assess what's going on for your patients. Now, I'm sorry to ask you this. You are allowed to ask questions, apparently, but I will ignore you completely. No, I won't. I have to repeat it. It's not that I'm partially, deaf or anything like that. I have to do it so everybody in Denmark, Turkey, and all the other places can hear. So you feel free to ask questions. That's fine, but I will repeat them back to you. I just want to review a bit because it's really important. We're talking about the law of cure today and what that means. I just want to make sure we know what you did this morning, I think, with Carol about the law of similars. Like cures like. Why? Why? I just want to review that slightly for a minute or two. The reason is because the symptoms which allopathy or medicine will treat as the major problem to be got rid of, opposed, antibiotics, antidepressants, anti-this and anti-that, we say, it's not just we say, Hippocrates said it, who's the father of modern medicine, said, actually, there are two ways of healing. One by opposites, and the other, which has somehow kind of got erased from medical things, like cures like, he said. So how does that work? It works because we work with the patient. We don't think, we're not arrogant, we don't think we know what the cause of disease is. We don't assume we always know. The only way we can know is by what the patient's vital force, call it what you like, energy, calm, I don't care, pancake, any word you like, doesn't matter. That energy system of the patient is going to show where it's disturbed and what it's trying to do to get better, whatever the situation. So what we say is, if we get a substance that just is similar to that, to encourage that, then surely we're copying what trusting the patient's system, organism to get better, will do that, rather than just stop it happening. Do you follow? So this is really important. It's really important to understand that as well when we come to the law of cure, because our main thing to be looking at is symptoms, and I'm going to keep saying this, and it's very easy later on to start forgetting the importance of symptoms. We love symptoms. Symptoms are our Bible, if you like. Everything we watch and observe in our patients is looking for symptoms. What kind of symptoms are we looking for? Well, I look out there, I see blank faces. I'll tell you just in case. We're looking for characteristic symptoms, the symptoms that individualize the patient rather than the disease. So, in other words, suppose we're treating a case of pneumonia. Do we know what pneumonia is? Okay, it's an inflammation of the lung, you know, it can causes fever. Oh, people are actually writing notes. It's not often that happens to me. It's always a bit depressing. I feel quite, you know, oh my goodness, they're writing my words down. And then you go around and look and it says, 1 pound of cheese, don't forget the biscuits. Always such a shame. But, sorry?
We make it short.
Okay, just for I've got to say now, you've said that. She says she'll make it short. So we're just looking for the individual symptoms. The fact that someone's got pneumonia, irritable bowel, depression, tonsillitis means nothing to us. It's a label. This is where doctors move in. They can give they can say tonsillitis antibiotics, brilliant, easily sorted, fantastic. I've now gone on my holiday with 8 nurses, have a great time in Spain, have a huge car, be paid lots of money, become a consultant, whereas us cycle home from our practice because we haven't got enough money for a car. But hey, we're not materialistic. So, yeah, I've got a very nice bicycle, I'll have you know, excuse me. So, you know, we're looking not at the name of the disease. That doesn't interest us. That's just the beginning for what? All together now, symptoms. Thank you. The characteristic symptoms which individualize the patient. Because what we're actually looking for is the reaction of the patient to what they've got. It's how do you react to what you've got? More important than what you've got. Does that make sense? Please say yes, because people are listening. I said I'd pay you money, I will do, don't worry. So it's to what they've got, the reaction to. So if we take pneumonia as an example, in one person has pain in the right lung, they feel terrified of it, they think they're going to die, they're drinking and very thirsty, but drinking in little sips of water. It started when they got really cold and after they'd eaten some very bad food. Is one pneumonia, okay? That's one person, that's like a whole different type of pneumonia. So we need one remedy for that person's pneumonia. But the other person's got pneumonia because they had a death in the family, their immune system's been terrible for a while, they've been nursing their mother, she died, immune system shot down, cold goes to the chest, pneumonia develops, they feel very sad, they don't care whether they get better or not. They're worse in warm rooms, they feel hot. Do you see? It's got to need a different medicine, surely. If we're going to cure people, we've got to do it depending on the individual. So we can go through examples like this just to make sure we're looking at the individual symptoms of the patient. It's very important. Do I have any questions so far? Gosh, that's awfully good, isn't it? So the question now is, okay, we've prescribed on, we've found a similar remedy, okay, believe it or not. I can only talk about calendula because I think that's what you've done. Anyway, we found calendula. We've definitely found this patient's got a cut. It's a little bit septic. I think I know the remedy for this. But we found the remedy for our patient based on the symptoms. What we now need to know, and this sounds so easy to say, you'll think, oh, I know the answer to that. How do we know that the patient's getting better under the action of our remedy? That sounds a silly question, doesn't it? Be honest. Oh, you're all so sweet. Oh. We can know because all sorts of things. The one thing, do you know what? We deal in energy medicine. And I'm going to remind you of that in year 3 and year 4, because you're going to forget it. We deal in energy medicine. So what's the first indication that the remedy you've given is working? They have more energy. Streamers, or whatever they call people out there. They have more energy. So they can feel. Now this is a very strange one too, because you can have more energy, but look, think about this. You have a bad skin eruption, or let's take pneumonia as an example, or a chesty cough. The remedy you're giving is going to raise your energy levels up. Does that automatically mean, oh my goodness, it's marvellous, my chest is completely much better, my skin just vanishes? I wish. I wish. What's likely to happen? Given that we're giving a remedy which stimulates the vital force to clear whatever problem's there in the first place, what's likely to happen? £1 million in cash for anybody that's brave enough to say. I've changed my mind about the £1 million. Streamers, they said it gets worse, and they're quite right. It can get worse. Now, this gets terribly exaggerated. 10% of cases, I always say. You can't, otherwise, it's worrying to say to a patient, well, what will happen after I take the remedy? Well, it'll be marvellous because you'll start oozing pus from your ears. This will be fantastic, you know. And then you'll start to get your nosebleeds that you used to have. But eventually, about a year down the line, you might start to feel a bit better. No. But you've got to get that sense. As I say, it doesn't happen very often, and I always try to avoid it. The patient gets a little bit worse. But strangely enough, they can often say, do you know what, I just feel much better. And yet everything's getting worse. Now we're talking a really transient stage, and we're talking not very often this can happen. But this is how the healing force works, the vital force works. You see, the vital force works by throwing things from the inside to the outside. Okay? So, for example, skin symptoms are, I mean, what does the skin do? Well, the skin does lots of things, doesn't it? I'm trying to think of one. Well, it holds you in, doesn't it? We'd look a bit silly without it, wouldn't we? We'd have all our livers showing, it would be messy. So the first thing it holds us, it does things like it protects us. It protects us from things out there. Sorry? Yes, from pathogens. That's a good word. What does it mean? No, I do. So it's, you know, also the other thing, it's actually a very nutritional. It absorbs vitamin D, other things. It's really important for that. And it throws things out. It eliminates through sweat, fever. Don't go giving Calpol to your kids and all that. You know, it's like a fever is really incinerating toxins. That's what it does, within reason. It gets very high, then you can think about other things. But that's what it does. It burns off. So the skin is absorbing and eliminating. When you take a cream or something to put on your kids' eczema and so on, what are you actually doing? You're stopping it. You see, it's anti. You're pushing it in. Calomel, do you remember that? I used to be dosed up with that as a kid. You'd have chicken pox. You'd get this pink stuff all over you. You look like a jelly baby. And that's embarrassing. When you're 28 and you've got to walk down to... You know, so you're pushing it. It's like having your dustbins and you keep keeping them in the house. You put them outside. Well, the body's really intelligent. The body, the vital force is incredibly intelligent. Really intelligent. You've got to know that. Allopathy treats it as if it's completely stupid, and really it would be better if we just built everybody in hospitals out of plastic. But no, we don't. It's intelligent. So the body throws things out from inside to the outside, which is why sometimes after a remedy you'll get what's called elimination. diarrhea, colds. I won't treat colds. Generally speaking, I won't treat them. Why? Because it's throwing stuff out. Vomiting, whatever it is, sweating more. These are actually good indications after a remedy that it's working. Now, it's not great for the patient, but if you talk a patient through this, they'll usually accept it. Does that all make sense to you? Yeah. We need to know the remedy's working. Now, we've got to be careful because, we say, mine line, yeah. We can say, oh, if the patient says they feel better, that's great. That's usually a good sign. It's simple. End of lecture, let's go for a coffee. Not quite so simple. King Charles II, just before he died, said, I feel much better. I'm going to get up today and go hunting. He felt better. He died. So it's not the guarantee that somebody feels better. Then you've got suggestible patients that they're very sweet. Let's take a remedy which you may not know, Polster. They're so sweet, they just want to please you. It doesn't matter what happens with the remedy. They say, oh, thank you, Mr. Bridger, for treating me. Oh, I feel I'm so horrible myself. And are you much better? Oh, I'm so much better. In what way? Well, my ears are discharging pus and I've got terrible diarrhea and I'm weak, but I know I trust you, Mr. Bridger. So there's all sorts of things taken into account here. Aggravations and so on. So Herring came up and he said, look, Herring, by the way, I think you had Dion, didn't you, my friend Dion, talking to you about the history of homeopathy? Yeah? Did he mention Herring? Yes. Okay. Did he tell you about how Herring was... Well, I'll tell you anyway, it doesn't matter. Repetition's a great thing in homeopathy. And I say it with so much more aplomb than he ever will. Herring was... he was born in 1800. He went to Leipzig University. Very clever, brilliant guy. That brilliant that they said to him, look, there's this sort of German bloke called Hahnemann who's come up with this mad theory that is getting on our nerves a bit. We want to have him discredited. Did he tell you this? Yes. Oh, well, I'm going to tell you anyway. I don't care. So he said, huh?
See if you're still the matches.
Yes, exactly, to see if we tell lies or not, yes. He didn't go to Leipzig at all, actually. Anyway, so Herring was looked into it, and he said, write a book about it, we'll pay you money. He read Hahnemann's books. He thought, this is brilliant. He started to think, there's something in this, it all makes sense. He then went and met Hahnemann and looked at some of his cases, and then, and it's funny how it happens, isn't it? There's no such thing as coincidence. He gets a septic finger. Did Dion tell you that? Yes. I think he stole my notes in advance. But so then, of course, so he's just straight into homeopathy. Then he becomes that's it. He becomes a homeopath. He goes to America. And one of the things he observes is this movement, the law of cure. Now, we hate laws. Well, I don't like laws. We say law, the simillimum, and all the rest of it. I like to think of it as a guide. Because if we say law, homeopaths are basically rebels, or anarchists. We don't like laws. And the thing is with homeopathy, which will annoy you terribly, is that there is no, you can say it's going to get on your nerves, I promise you, because nothing's ever absolutely concrete. If you're kind of anal and, you like everything in boxes, really this is going to be tricky for you. Because in homeopathy, you'll get so many vague descriptions about there's nothing definite. You'll get remedy pictures like calendula is very good for septic injuries and so on. Some other lecturer will come and say, well, not necessarily. So it's quite difficult to pin down because at the centre of the therapy is the patient. And patients are just vary so much. We individualise. We can't say, oh, these people all suffer from depression, or these people. Unfortunately, we cannot fix it like that. So the law of cure, or the principles, or the guiding things he gave us are really useful, but I will play with your heads a little bit. We'll go through some cases to illustrate it, just to confuse you a little bit, if I possibly can. So it's a guide only. So good old Herring, he said, what did he say? Shall I find it for you? He said, not in English, of course, this is the 4 principles, and I would write these down. Cure, indications of the patient's getting better are: 1, cure proceeds from above downwards. Cure proceeds from above downwards.
Proceeds or precedes.
Proceeds. That'd be weird if it was proceeds. I was just thinking,
Yeah, actually.
wouldn't make sense. But it did sound like I said that. I don't think I need to repeat that, do I? No, that's fine. Above, down. In other words, it's really strange, and you'll think it's really, but it's like, this is brilliant with how somebody gets, you can see, I'll run you through some examples. Someone who gets, say, a skin eruption on their head, remember the body's always trying to protect, the vital force is always trying to protect the most important organs, the tissue, the heart, you follow? Really important. That's always what it's trying to do. So it will push from above. Here you've got the brain, this area here. You'll see, say, skin eruptions or sinusitis or something like that. The body will move as it responds and tries to get rid of it. It will tend to push it down. Tend to push it down. Okay? Sinusitis. This is lovely because now, again, it's not a rule, but sinusitis, you treat sinusitis with a remedy. They've got terrible pains, aching and all the rest of it. And you give them a remedy, let's say a remedy called Kali-Bic or something like this, or in your case, calendula, because we'll just have to talk about calendula all the time. Calendula doesn't treat sinusitis, but I'm just going to say it. You just happen to give them some calendula ointment, the sinusitis starts to improve, and they say, I'm no better. Come back a month later or 3 weeks, I've now got sore throats. Good or bad? Good, based on this law of cure. And very often it will be. And we'll come on to something else about that in a minute. So it will, and skin eruptions, I've seen skin eruptions in kids, literally, you know, you just can't believe it when you see it. From here, upper part of the body, mother says it's no better. You say, you sure it's no better? The remedies indicated, I gave sulphur or whatever it was. Say, no, it's absolutely, in fact, it's moved. Where's it moved? It's now down on the legs. Now then, homeopathic trainees, are you pleased or not? Yes. What would you say to mother?
Well done.
Mother, well done. Have you ever heard of a chap called Konstantin Haring? He said, this is a marvellous sign. So, great, from above down, of course, a generalisation. The second is cure proceeds from within outward. Cure proceeds from within outward. Wow, how useful is that? Do you see what I'm saying? Is all the remedies, we call it centrifugal, will push out wherever it can. Will push out. And it can be so useful. From within outwards, you know, you have a heart pathology or heart problems in your patient and you're treating for angina and other things like that. You start to treat them, and I've seen this not that long ago, where the patient started to get respiratory problems and asthma. Never said he'd had it before. In fact, it turned out he did, in fact. But anyway, so he gets asthma and stuff like that. From a point of view of what we're talking about, from within out, good or bad? Good. Good. People in the back, at least look a bit cheerful, would you? You may disagree, you're entitled to have your opinion, but it's good. Of course, now don't get the wrong idea. I'm not saying, oh, that's great, you've got asthma, fabulous, homeopathy is brilliant, good old herring, and go home. Obviously, what we then do is start to treat the symptoms of the asthma and the respiratory stuff. Shall I tell you what happened to this chap? It's just come into my head, actually, as I think about it. Do you know what happened to him? Of course you don't. How could you? You'd have to read my mind. You'd be lying if you said yes. He started to get cystitis. Cystitis. What's cystitis? Someone tell me. Tell the people in Denmark and Turkey and all the rest of it what cystitis is. An infection of the urinary tract, absolutely, and it's very, very painful. Very good or bad? Good. Good. Now I'll tell you something else as well, and I didn't know this. I had to really press him. One he had as a child. He asked his mother, "Had I ever had chest problems before?" As a kid, he did. His mother, he didn't think he did, but he did. And the other thing is, he'd had cystitis before as well. when he was a teenager, had cystitis. He was drinking a lot of drink and into drugs and so on, and he'd had bouts of cystitis that weren't responding to antibiotics. Next stage, healing crisis. So we've got cure proceeds from without outward. We've got that with that case I'm talking about, moving down the body now. Great, it's not finished yet, but it's moving out. Cure proceeds from the most important organs to the least important. Do you want to write that down? Shall I say it again?
Yes.
Cure proceeds from the most important organs to the least important. That's kind of logical, I think, from what I've said so far, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah.
So heart going to lungs. Give me another example, someone.
Liver.
Liver going to
Gallbladder.
gallbladder, maybe, yes, okay.
Skin.
Skin, something like that, absolutely, moving out all the time, particularly where skin appears. So very good. This is the one that will, if you weren't sure about what I was saying now about where I was getting so excited that he'd had these symptoms before, this is really important. Probably I would say almost more important than the other. Cure proceeds in the reverse order of appearance of symptoms. That sounds such a mouthful. How's it going back there, all right?
So could you repeat
I could. I said, how's it going back? Oh, no, sorry, I see what you mean. Cure proceeds in the reverse order of appearance of symptoms. Wow. I can't tell you how lovely that is. Any homeopath listening to me lecturing, however, will suddenly be thinking of their cases where they've seen this happen, because it's so lovely to see. What?
one more time? Just lost the last bit.
Listen, I did the proceeds one with you. You've had your money's worth. All right. She's just asking if I can repeat it again for the 5th time. Cure proceeds in the reverse order of appearance of symptoms.
Thank you.
Shall I sing it for you? No, it's really important to get right. You're quite right to write it down like that because it's terribly important. In other words, what you're doing is this. What you're observing, and what Herring observed is, you will see that the remedies take the patient back almost in time. As they get better with what they've got now, okay, maybe you've given them what we call a constitutional remedy and they just felt great, okay, that's accepted. They feel brilliant. Don't even need to come back. It's called a constitutional remedy and that can happen. Actually, all that tells you is that the patient was quite healthy. You can think you're really brilliant, and I expect I'll show you video cases next year, and that I'll show you where one remedy cured the patient completely, and I will want you to think I'm brilliant. I will expect you to worship me. But you won't, because it wouldn't be anything about me. It just means the patient was really healthy. That's all. Most patients aren't. Most patients takes time to get sick. They go through a process of different things happening. Think about your own life, people. Think what's happened to you. You were once that lovely little golden apple of your mother's eye. Oh, and then it went wrong, didn't it? And this happened, that happened. You got skin eruptions, you got snotty. Then you got bolshy in your teenage years. Then you took drugs, didn't you? Didn't you? Alcohol. You know, believe it or not, we have a life. It's like we're watching energy move. Then you have a love affair, it goes horribly wrong. And you get married, that went horribly wrong. Oh, basically life is miserable, is it not? Until you come across homeopathy. Because it'll take you right back if you want. So all this stuff happens, you get illnesses happening, you know, you get hormonal problem, whatever it is. Then you come and you say, with all that history, you know, you've, in a right old mess, been drugged up to the eyeballs, had cannabis, been vaccinated against everything. Not you personally, well, I'm picking on you because you keep repeating it. And so when you come, you say, what's the problem? I've got a headache. Do you follow? Actually, I had a guy at Glastonbury, I worked in the Travellers Collective. This is an aside, just to entertain myself, really. And he came to the tent, there's a first aid tent, and you just dealt with sunburn. Or this guy came and said, I've got a headache. This is quite true. He was a bit strange. I said, well, when did it start? He said, about 15 years ago. Someone came up to me in a pub with an axe and hit me. And I thought, oh, let's go, hang on a second. You know, this is not an acute situation. So people will come in, and what happens is as you start to treat them with what they've come with, guess what? As their energy gets better, where does it go? If it doesn't get completely better, do you follow? Where will it go? Inwards. Inwards, back to other things that need to be sorted out. And you will see this again and again, and it's lovely to see. It's lovely to see because you can say to the patient, look, remember, and this is, I particularly love it because I really do like the mental and psychological prescribing. The same is true in homeopathy, by the way. What goes on physically goes on mentally and emotionally. And listen, this is not homeopathic, this is scientific fact. Scientific fact is what's going on at a cellular level, is going on at the brain level, is going on at the emotional level. It's all tied in. So very important for you to understand that. So, but you see this also emotionally. Somebody says, and I'll give you a couple of little examples where, you know, they're in a terrible state, they're depressed and so on. As you treat them, and I've actually got one of my little cases as examples here, it starts to get better. It goes back to feeling tearful and upset. Now this person has never been upset before, never showed his emotions, typical bloke, you know. You know what they're like, don't you? Hairy little beast, keep away from them. Horrible. You ask a bloke how he feels, he'll say, with my fingers. That's it. No feelings on it. Anyway, this poor chap started to come into his feelings again. The remedy I gave was a remedy, as it happens, called Nature Mule, which is well known for this, which is like the very closed-in person. They're very British, stiff upper lip, do you follow? It's like, I'm fine. You know, they can have their legs dropping off. They go, oh, how are you today, Mr. Morrison? I'm absolutely fine. Blood pouring out of his ears. Do you follow? Yes. So it's very sort of stiff, very, you know, I'm absolutely okay. You know the sort of person, I'm sure. Do you? Are you listening to me? No. So this poor chap, of course, he's holding in, if you do that, the problem is you hold in lots of emotion, don't you? And you just can't express anything. This is really bad for you. Really bad for you. So, and he had migraines. He had headaches and high blood pressure. I gave him Nat Mule. Do you think he came and said, hey man, I've just been to California. I'm now really expressing my emotions. I'm beautiful. I just cry when I want. I love. I just feel. I never think. It's so bad for you. Do you follow? I go around naked now because I love. No, he didn't. What did he do? He said, I hate you. I said, well, so do lots of people. But he said, I hate you because I've just been so upset, crying and all that. What did I say to him? I said, look, just listen to yourself. Well, how's your blood pressure? He says, oh, that's been better actually. Funnily enough, see, he didn't remember. How have your headaches? Oh, I did have one last week. How was it? Oh, not bad actually. Did you have the dizzy lights? Did you have the... No. Now, why would that be, Mr. Morrison? What are you trying to say? I'm saying that the fact that you held in all your emotions shows me you held them in so much, your blood pressure went up, you've got migraine. Now we've treated, you've started to express your emotions again. Do you follow? Now, your blood pressure's gone down again. It's not a girly thing to do to cry, I said to him. And we both burst into tears. He said, that's so beautiful. So there you see this lovely movement from inside out, suppression inwards, emotions physically too. You can see it with remedies like silica, Hepar sulf. You have an abscess of the jaw. I had a patient like this very recently. In fact, she had an abscess on her vagina as well and in her jaw. And no treatment was helping at all. And I gave her silica. And what happened? It burst out, it oozed, and she was so, the relief was amazing. It doesn't have to do that, sometimes it will eliminate and absorb anyway. But again, you've got this lovely thing about it moving out. reverse order of appearance. You can take, believe it or not, patients back from maybe they're like 60, 70, they can start having symptoms they had in their teenage years that were never sorted out. Honestly. A rash that was suppressed, a vaccination that went wrong, a food poisoning, an emotional situation. You can take them back to that, and the remedy will take them through it, I promise you. Ask any homeopath if that sounds, it sounds a bit unrealistic, but it's true. Ask any homeopath. Does that make sense? How are we doing for time? It can't be. What time? Oh, we're all right, aren't we? Okay, so good. Any questions so far? Yes.
We're talking about symptoms going from the inside out.
Yes.
So, does that apply for emotions as well?
Yes.
So,
yes.
How do you know if they go from crying to another emotion? Is that going from inside to out, or is that just change of emotions?
That's probably just change of emotions. It depends. So just so everybody can understand, it's just asking, is that rule of going from inside out true on an emotional level? I answer yes, generally. But then she says, so somebody's crying 1 minute. What did you say then? Angry, that doesn't matter. Angry the next. Is that moving with the law of cure? Probably not, that's just changing emotions. But if we take your example and say, look, and this happens, there's a remedy, it'd be lovely to tell you about the remedies once we get them under our belt. You know, a remedy where somebody cries a lot, they've had a very hard life, and they're constantly weeping, and this is the problem for them, is that they're so depressed, they feel so alone in life, let's say. You give them, anybody know anything about homeopathy, wants to give it a shot, what would you give them? They feel terribly alone, they're weepy, they've got hay fever. Pulsatilla, very good. Don't be intimidated just because they're new, I'll catch them out one day. I thought you were going to say calendula for a minute. But there's a remedy called Pulsatilla, which is just for this weeping, although they just can't help it. Now you give them Pulsatilla and it really helps them, but in the law of cure, either they're completely cleared and feel much better, or supposing all that weepiness started, and I'm taking your emotion here of anger, when they got so angry, they were so abused by their partner, and then in their job, but in their job their boss was foul, but they had to work for him because they were paying the mortgage. See, I can't get angry with the boss who's paying my mortgage, Marcus, even if I want to, Marcus, because I know he's listening. Because if I do, I lose my job. Wow. Do you know what happens chemically with that? What's going on in the system? I could spend time telling you what happens when you do that. But it's toxic. Chemically, it's toxic. So this person, what have they suppressed? What's the emotion they've really suppressed? Anger that led to them feeling, oh, I can't do that. And the body's going, oh, I'll just try and cry then. Makes sense? So we treated the weepiness with the pulse. That helped. But now what's going to happen to them? They're going to maybe feel angry. They come back and say, that remedy you're it's really, I've just been getting cross with everybody. I've been getting cross with my husband. I'm getting this and that. Now then, homeopaths, we're happy, are we not? We say to her, this is great. You need to read a book by Constantine Herring, which will explain what's going on. But as soon, now I know you may say, but that's not much better. It is, I promise. But if you explain to a patient that this is the process, they'll work with you. They'll probably go, oh great, that makes complete sense. If it doesn't, then you've got to help them. If they get really angry, well, we'll find a remedy for that too. I'm not saying we leave them there, but I'm saying that law of cure is, this is really good. So this is when it all started. Your irritable bowel will almost certainly be getting better, or whatever it is that they're suffering from, will be getting better, and so on and so on. So actually, in a sense, homeopathy takes us back in time. Not as one patient said to me, well, I end up in a pram as a baby, suckling my mother's breast. I said, I shouldn't think so. But you get the, you know, of course not. It doesn't take you back. Other patients will say, but I had cancer once. Will I get it again? No, no. It will only take you through the symptoms that you didn't quite clear up. Do you follow? And very gently too, I promise. Very unusually you'll get an aggravation where they go back to, but then you can work with it easily. More questions?
Yes, I have one. So if you look at the mental, emotional, physical planes,
Yes.
there's obviously a hierarchy between those. Is there a hierarchy on each of those separate levels of planes? So for instance, on the physical level, is there a hierarchy of I don't know, disease or ailments or whatever?
Thanks a lot. I thought it was going swimmingly until you asked that question, but that's a very good question, and actually you're quite right. Just for repetition's sake, otherwise something horrible will happen to me. He's just saying, he's asking, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because it's quite a big question, but it's a really good question, is there's obviously levels on an emotional plane of symptoms and a hierarchy, if you like, of importance, I think, is that right? The same would be true on the physical plane, that there's a hierarchy, some symptoms being more important than others. Is that right?
Yes.
So I'm going to have to say to you, yes. You're absolutely into another kind of law about the hierarchy of symptoms, of which is important. I didn't quite get another part of what you're asking, which is you were saying are some more important than others, or what was the actual question as such?
I think that is what I'm saying. You know, so if you have eczema, is that
Yeah,
less important than
yeah,
some other physical thing that you would have?
yes,
And the reason I'm asking is in terms of cure, then can you see a progression
yes,
down the hierarchy?
yes. So can you see a migration from one symptom to another? Really, really good question, but I mean, it's a little bit out of because it's moving into a hierarchy of symptoms, but I will answer your question when I've worked out what the answer is. No. You will get a migration of symptoms, but what will happen is, so supposing somebody's got they've got eczema and another problem at the same time. So can you give me another problem at the same time as eczema? So we say, huh?
Asthma.
Asthma as well. So, well, that's really common. You'll get asthma, and this is a tricky one for homeopaths sometimes. You get people born with asthma and they have eczema, or they have eczema and then it turns into asthma later on. So what can happen is you can take all the symptoms into account, look for the individualizing symptoms, you treat the asthma, and then as that gets better, guess what gets worse? The skin. Well, that should be a good thing. But then sometimes what can happen is you treat the skin and it goes back and you've got asthma again. And that can be a bit worrying. The rule of that for me would be stay with what needs treating as the body presents it at the time, loyally. But mentals, emotionals, lovely, if they're not common symptoms. If they're not common symptoms. Feeling depressed after and grief after your granny died 2 days ago is not, we wouldn't regard that as pathology, would we? If your goldfish died 15 years ago and you haven't got over it, it's striking. It needs treating. Get it? And you know how I got, I'm going to bring you back to law because I've gotten to hierarchy. Well, you can just leave this afternoon and never come back because you'll have done the course, really. I got into this, when I started talking, I thought this was all nonsense. I just started homeopathy. My first ever case, I read, and I was still a student, and she was a lovely friend of mine who was a pianist. She'd got arthritis, rheumatism, loads of problems, digestive problems. I said, I'm doing homeopathy. It's my second weekend on the course, like you. And I said, I'll find a remedy for you. I read all of Kent's Materia Medica. I couldn't find any remedy that looked remotely like her or covered her. The only one that seemed a bit similar was phosphorus, which said they're quite skinny, tall people. I thought, that'll do, because she is. I can't find a real similar remedy to her. So I said, in fact, I lived in Wakefield, I was coming down on the coach to study my college weekend, So before I went, I said, here's a phosphorus 30, take 2 pills. She said, what'll happen? I said, symptoms will appear in a reverse order of appearance, will move from inside out, above down. So what does that mean? So I don't really know. I'll see you on Monday. I came back, I'd completely forgotten. And she came to me and said, it happened. I said, what did? She said, all my symptoms went from my shoulders down, exactly as you said. I said, stop messing me around. You're having me on. But it was true. And that was my first, that was probably one of my best cases of seeing the reverse. Absolutely, literally went like, interesting enough, another thing that happened to her, about 6 months I was treating with phosphorus, she then said she got pleurisy, which is what? How am I doing for time? Oh, God. What? Yes, it's the membrane of the lungs gets stuck. You know, you've got 2 layers really that move over when you breathe in and out. It's like there's oil in between them. I'm putting it a bit crudely, but if they get an infection or stuck, can you imagine the pain when they stick? It's like scars. You breathe in, what sort of pain are you going to get? Why do I pick on you? Because you stare at me without blinking. It's a bit scary. You get a sharp pain, and it's described, you know, if you listen in a stethoscope, there's footsteps in the snow. It's like a crunching sound. You can imagine your symptoms now are going to be, your common symptoms of pleurisy would be pain, breathing. The person with pleurisy will hold the chest, you know, hardly breathe, panting like a dog. Do you follow? So she said, oh, something terrible's happened, I've got pleurisy. I said, oh no. She said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. So it looks like you're going to die. She said, no, I don't want to. I said, all right, I'll find a remedy for you. So I took this, I said, have you ever had it before? She said, yes. I went, oh. So I'd given her phosphorus. What did I do now? What did I do now? I checked to see if phosphorus covered pleurisy, and it did. She'd had it when she was... So the phosphorus had worked all the way through. She hadn't told me about this, which is another thing. Sometimes people come in and say stuff, and you say, has it ever happened before? And they'll go, yes. They didn't tell you when you took the case. And she said, yes, I had it before. So I left her on the phosphorus. Actually, I think I gave her a small dose of phosphorus, and it cleared beautifully. That woman came on to study homeopathy. So that was my... Oh, I've got... How much have we got? Not long. Okay. Shall we do them quickly? Can I talk really fast? Okay. Shall we just run through some, you know, little cases I've knocked down for this lecture? Case, just listen carefully. Don't worry about it. Just see if you can get that understanding, which is different to learning. Understanding. Understanding comes from here, not here. This is intellectual. Lots of homeopaths out there are awfully academic and not a lot actually, academic and intellectual types, useless with people. So, you know, the most important thing for you is get it here. You know, if you love people and you're passionate about the subject, you'll do fine. We'll see you through. You don't have to learn everything in Materia Medica. That doesn't necessarily make you a good homeopath, okay? If you haven't got either the intellectual ability or the emotional ability, there's still hope for you, because look at me, I'm here. I'm teaching. They all thought I was a hopeless case, but I'm not. So listen to this. Case, female 39. She's got migraine, started from a divorce. Vital force hits. Emotional. Bang, I don't want to deal with the divorce. What'll I do? I'll cause headaches. The body will do this. Often compensate. It's like, if I'm in pain, I don't have to think about... You'd be amazed. Worst warm rooms, wants to cry but can't. Problemo. She wants to cry but can't. Held in. Hates fat, she's very thirsty. I gave her a remedy called, anybody want to have a shot? Which, she's right. I'd run out of cream, but... remedy called Natmure. Over a period of 3 months, the migraines got much better, but she started to get tonsillitis. Question: burning tonsillitis, again, with remedies, very burning pains, wanted ice cold drinks. What's my question? To make sure. Have you ever, thank you, ever had it before? I think we can be friends again now. Not for long. But, so, good news? Brilliant. Now we just see, with the tonsillitis symptoms that she's got now, is it still Nat Mule that she needs, or has she moved on to another remedy? That's all I have to do. And in fact, it has moved on to another remedy. All right? Do you get it? Sure. Boy age 3, eczema as a baby, started with the MMR vaccine. Sorry, it didn't. The MMR vaccine he had started a cough that went onto his chest and got bronchitis. Very poor immune system, tiny little fella. I haven't got my, but I remember this. It's quite a few years ago, but I remember him. Tiny, tiny. You thought, it's like, wow, this guy's just so fragile. How's he going to get through life kind of feeling? Cough, colds, diarrhea. And when all this, sorry, I'm reading my own writing here. When he had the vaccine and all this started, the eczema went. Okay? So he has that vaccine, the MMR, the eczema that he had disappeared, he gets respiratory problem. Now notice that what's happening now, it's the reverse of Herring's law of cure, isn't it? The disease tends to move inwards. Cure moves from in out, disease moves from out in. So that's bad. It's gone in from the, the skin, which is eliminating, that's been suppressed, it's having a cough. So what do? I gave him a remedy called sulfur, 200 C, doesn't matter about the potency. All the coughs and colds clear up over the next 2-3 weeks, but the eczema reappeared. What do I do now? Say it again?
Check whether the eczema is under sulfur.
Check whether she says the eczema is under sulfur. Excellent. Anybody else got any ideas? Does that sound right?
Yes.
Happy? I did, and it did. So what did I do? Nothing. I left it. I said, look, we'll give it a bit more time, but I think now, come back, the body's reacting really well. I don't want to go giving you pills for the sake of it. They're expensive. Comes out of my pocket. The baby's doing well, the kid's doing well. Left it, eczema disappeared. Everything fine. See? Law of cure. And actually, in that, you've got a reversal of symptoms. You've got from within, out, and so on. How are we doing for time? Oh, no, I'm going to have to leave you. I'm sorry, darlings, but I've got to go back in the cupboard. Can we do one more? Is that it?
Yes. Yeah, do one more. Go on.
Sure? Let's choose a good one. Oh, yeah, here's a nice one. This is one I've got going now at the moment. This lady, she's lovely, lovely lady from Iran, lovely. So bright and jolly, never moans about anything. She just comes in, hello, Mr. Bridger. Was in a lot of pain. You feel, oh no, can't you just cry or wince or something? No, don't worry about me. Other people have it much worse, So I go, you're telling me, I'll tell you. Listen to my story now. But she's got multiple sclerosis. She's been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, long time, sleep terrible. She has vertigo with it because it affects the cranial nerve. A feeling that she's going to fall over in the street. Blurred vision, right leg particularly bad, but the legs give way when she's walking. She gets quite frightened. She's frightened of disease. She's frightened of dying. That now again, back to common, that's not unusual, is it? If she's got a chronic incurable disease, that you would, if that was somebody else with, a hangnail or something, who said, I think I'm worried about dying, that would make it important. But her case, it's like, it's common. So anyway, she's got this fear of death. It all started from the death of her father. Notice this. Notice how we're looking at causations now, which are really very emotional. Brings on some terrible stuff. Very constipated. Much better damp weather, which is unusual. Her joints and everything are better. I gave her a remedy called Causticum, low potency, 30, because I was trying to avoid an aggravation. That yes, it might get worse. I didn't want to for her. I wanted to be gentle. I always do want to be gentle, except there are 1 or 2 cases where I don't, but that's another story. So she comes in, and then over the period of the last couple of months I've seen her, she's sleep is now okay. Is the remedy working? Probably. When sleep starts to get better, that's lovely. Not always, but often. By the way, little tip for you. When you give an acute remedy, this is quite often what happens in terms of you know, whether somebody's getting better. If you like law of cure, they've got flu and something, you give them a remedy, they fall asleep, you're laughing. It's good. As long as they don't just stay asleep for a long time and start to go blue, not moving, getting a bit smelly, that's another story. But she did really well on it, and no vertigo. Wow, no vertigo. I'm very happy. Sometimes you just have such an affinity with patients, you take their place almost, you know. But she's doing. But guess what happens then? She came in last week. Now this is an unresolved case at the moment. So, guess what? Oh no, it's terrible. No vertigo, sleeps really good. The knees are really agony, and the soles of my feet are terrible and burning like crazy. Me, hooray! Do you see? You've got to be careful, Chrissy, when you hear this, you go, I'm so happy for you. And they go, no, it's not funny. But of course it's great. Do you follow? So I'm explaining, so I say, we're working on that. And of course I'm not going to leave her with that, but the remedy's working. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.